नमस्कार, म सुरज न्यौपाने bankingsamachar.com को कार्यक्रम बैंकिङ बहसको नयाँ संस्करण लिएर यहाँहरू समक्ष उपस्थित भएको छु। बैंकिङ बहस कार्यक्रममा हामी बैंक तथा वित्तीय क्षेत्रका वर्तमान गतिविधिहरू, चुनौतीहरू र सम्भावनाहरूको विषयमा बहस गर्ने गर्दछौँ। हालै भारत र नेपाल बीच क्रस बोर्डर डिजिटल पेमेन्टको सुरुवात भएसँगै यो विषयलाई लिएर हामी सबैमा उत्सुकता बढिरहेको छ। यसै क्रममा आजको श्रृङ्खलामा हामी भारतीय फोन पे अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय पेमेन्ट बिजनेसका प्रमुख कार्यकारी अधिकृत रितेश पाईसँग क्रस बोर्डर डिजिटल पेमेन्टका विषयमा कुराकानी गर्न गइरहेका छौँ। आउनुहोस् उहाँलाई कार्यक्रममा स्वागत गरौँ। Welcome to this interaction, Ritesh. It's our pleasure to have you in this dialogue. So, yesterday officially PhonePe international payment business and PhonePe has inaugurated their service in Nepal. So, in this context, what I would like to ask you is, what does this launch event means to the people in India and Nepal?
So, if you look at how UPI started as a service, right, way back in 2016, when officially it started being consumed in the open environment, it has actually leapfrogged and created new benchmarks as far as digital payments is concerned. Today, if you see in India, UPI is a very household name, and it has just grown in multiples, both in terms of value and volume. So, the point was, how do we now take UPI as a payment ecosystem internationally? This is something which is a mandate that even the government is pursuing. This is something which the regulator is also encouraging. And then we have our own domestic network called NPCI, who is actually executing a lot of these things by way of doing tie-ups with various geographies. And the sole purpose is being how we can, ensure that there are more geographies, more use cases added from the same UPI app that the Indian customer is using today. When he goes abroad, he is able to transact. So an offshoot of that and those collaborations and tie-ups that NPCI is doing in different geographies, we being one of the largest players as far as UPI transactions is concerned, right? Both in terms of value and volume. Even on the merchant acquiring side, we have almost 39 million merchants onboarded to accept UPI payments. It is but logical that we are the ones who actually tailgate and go into different geographies the moment NPCI enables that geography. So it's in this regard that yesterday we had this particular event. The idea was to socialize with the various stakeholders out here, because we have seen this happening in India. It's very important that every stakeholder in the payments ecosystem realizes his role and also plays his part. Because this, digital payments is like an orchestra.
Yeah,
right? There
exactly.
are multiple musicians out there,
Yeah.
and each one has to play his part. Then it sounds really, joyful to the ears, right? So that's the same thing on digital payments also. So the issuer side is something that we will control now, because we have the UPI app users in India. We know how to engage them. We know how to communicate them. We know how to drive and educate, because we already are catering to them on the domestic side. The acquirer also plays an equally important role, because the acquirer needs to be aware that, okay, now there is a new payment method that can be used for, fulfilling goods and services when an Indian traveler comes to Nepal. So the whole idea was how we create a fine balance, how do we create a proper communication, and how do I proliferate the UPI payment ecosystem in Nepal.
So, what are the basic pain points this cross-border payment will solve for the user from India?
So today, if you see, Indians, there are almost 1.5 million Indians who travel to Nepal, and this is the authentic figure that is available in public domain. Indians on an annual basis end up spending almost 1.8 billion rupees, which is almost close to 220 million US dollars, right? Some of the on-ground challenges that we have seen is One is there is a limitation to the number of the value of INR currency that you can carry to Nepal, which
Yeah.
is not more than
Not more than-
25,000. Secondly, all denomination currencies are not accepted. Right? It's
Yeah.
always 100 rupee or
It has to be
below most.
100 or below.
So now, if I get 25,000 worth of Indian currency in 100 rupee notes, you know what would be the issue, right? I mean, firstly, like you have to really manage and handling cash. Like, India is like a very in a hyper growth model as far as digital payments is concerned, and our regulator, the governor of RBI, has actually gone on record to say that India contributes to almost 46% of the world's digital payments. That means we are so used to it, and now suddenly, if I'm going to a foreign location and I'm again forced to use cash, honestly, people have lost that practice as well. So I think keeping these two data points in mind, one is of course the cash, the denominations that I need to carry. The third issue is also the Indian issued debit and credit cards are not allowed to be paid in foreign currency in Nepal.
Okay.
Right? That's because Indian rupee is accepted here. So there is a justification to it. So according to the foreign exchange regulations, since Nepal and Bhutan both accept Indian currency, hence the cards issued in India can't be used to transact in a foreign currency here. So that also becomes a limitation. So cash is the only option now. But with the UPI, right, it is taking care of all those pain points. And hence we are very confident that this will be the one size fits all solution whenever it will come, whenever an Indian traveler will come to Nepal. I think UPI will actually solve the problem of actually carrying hard cash as well as the digital payment issue that a debit and credit card faces.
And what are the benefits that the Nepalese people visiting India will get out of this arrangement?
So right now, look, I mean, every cross-border payment to some extent is bilateral in nature. When I'm saying bilateral, it's not like two entities shaking hands, but it's always if an issuer from India, and when I'm saying issuer, it's an app user in India coming and transacting at a Nepal merchant who has a QR code. The vice versa is also applicable, right? Wherein a Nepali app user can also come and transact at a Indian merchant, right? To the best of my knowledge, the testings, the certifications have been completed. I think there's just some regulatory approvals that are pending. Once that is addressed, I think even the Nepali citizens having an app in a Nepali currency out here will be able to transact in India as well.
Can you guess the why this is a bit delayed? Because it was supposed to be started. It was almost supposed to be started earlier, right? So why? What is there? Are there any?
No, I mean my idea in this is very limited. Like I said, from enabling a digital payments ecosystem, we can do that, right? There will be certain regulatory thought process attached to it, right? Which I think the respective agency would be best suited to answer. But the technical piece is not a concern, is what I've been given to understand, and we have seen transactions happening and being tested.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. So another what I would like to ask you is why do there are a lot of other players in Nepalese market, right? NCHL as well, right? So why did you choose to go with PhonePe?
So in my initial comments, I did mention, right? So we are tailgating wherever NPCI has gone ahead and done the handshakes, right? Honestly, we are riding on a ecosystem, and wherever the network will play the role of an enabler, we'll go ahead and work with those respective players on the on the foreign location. As of now, I think as far as Nepal is concerned, PhonePe, the Nepal PhonePe, is the one who is integrated with NPCI. And since they have completed and put in those efforts, the logical step was that we end up working with them. But like I said, we are driven by whatever network plays the role of an enabler.
So this is not an exclusive arrangement, right?
This is not. This is an. So you have to understand. These are interoperable payment systems, right? So this is not like I go and do bilateral handshakes that my users will come and consume. it will become an overkill for me. I mean, just imagine I going and talking to a Nabil Bank, I going and talking to SBI, I going and talking to Himalaya Bank. It will be too much of an overkill if I were to do, because then it comes with a lot of operational overheads. When network enables this, right, my settlement, reconciliation, dispute management, all of it gets covered as per the network rules, which actually is a good way of doing transactions, because the entire ecosystem benefits out of it, right? Be it by way of education, be it by way of operational overheads, or even the price points at which we end up doing business.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. So can you tell me why PhonePe has become your ideal partner?
I mean, again, to what I mentioned earlier, the PhonePe association started again because NPCI played the role of an enabler. They were the ones who got them into the mainstream of the UPI being used as a cross-border payments ecosystem. And I guess when you work with like-minded people, relationships develop, right? And we found that team extremely how do I say it? A strategic fit,
Fit.
equally hungry, equally agile, equally nimble, as far as rolling out solutions or doing the handshakes or participating in various activities. Right? I mean, tech will play a certain part. Technology will play a certain part. It will bring you up to a certain speed. But there is a whole lot beyond tech that you need to do to proliferate a lot of these digital payments. I think PhonePe has really resonated well and complemented us very well as far as doing a lot of ground level spade work is concerned.
So how can someone visiting from India generally activates this service, and what is the operating process of using this service?
So it's very simple. A lot of this is self-service mode, right? So people are used to using the PhonePe app in India. Uh, till now, it was meant for domestic transactions. So now we have a functionality, again, like I said, in a self-service mode where a customer can access the app, activate the international transaction, and then whenever he lands, he can end up using the transaction in.
People are very eager to know about the transaction limits for of this cross-border payment.
So UPI follows the same transaction limit, which is 1 lakh INR, 1 lakh Indian rupees
It's per day,
per day per
per day
transaction.
per transaction. That's the maximum limit that someone can spend
On a daily basis.
on a daily basis.
Is a healthy enough limit, sufficient enough to begin with. If we really start bursting that limit, honestly, it will be a nice problem to have, and we can go back and really look at some of these, the spend limits to be revisited.
So you have worked across different countries, right? So for the internationalization of UPI. So you have worked with different regulatory organizations as well across different countries. So what kind of regulatory mindset do you find in the context of Nepal?
Look, I think it's a given fact that innovations will always continue to be ahead of regulations. Okay. And having spoken to so many regulators the world over, I think most of the regulators like to wait and watch. Okay. And I'm not trying to sound diplomatic. This is a typical
Yeah, exactly.
a regulator's mindset, and I would rather call it a regulator's dilemma. Okay. See, we are talking about digital, right? Digital as a concept actually mushroomed and bloomed, I would say, in the last 8 or 9 years.
9 years.
Right?
Yeah.
Regulations have been archaic, right? So today, if you expect someone to write regulations on these modern methods and technology and all, it will be a challenge, right? So, like I said, regulators like to wait and watch. They are not in a hurry to write guidelines, because sometimes trying to write guidelines can also shunt innovation, right? Because you also need to understand how it is accepted, how it will actually, as they say in English, when the rubber meets the road, how will it actually work when it actually goes into production? So the regulator mindset always remains the same. They are not averse to experimenting, but I think you will need a lot of engaging to be done. You will also need to do a lot of hand-holding with the regulator. In my earlier avatars, the kind of methodology that I followed was always to engage them, explain them what we are trying to do. Maybe try and convince them to do a small proof of concept with a small user group and come back to them with the results. That is how you gain trust, confidence, and then the regulator can also take a very measured call around, okay, do I need to write the regulations now, or do I come up with some draft guidelines around it, and then over a period of time, a year, 2 year basis, how the momentum of the product is, I come up with more formal guidelines. So these are things. It has to be a very engaging, collaborative, dialogue-oriented kind of a thing, because you will also have to bring the regulators up to speed on a lot of the technology-related stuff. Right?
Okay, you have closely observed the regulators in India, right? Because you're right from there. So, what kind of mindset has led the development of this UPI ecosystem in India? What is behind it?
I would give a lot
and
of credit.
what we can learn from it,
So I think one of the points that came out in yesterday's session also, and which I clearly relate to, is that Nepal lacks a digital public infrastructure. Okay, I think a lot of it that we are able to speak today in India is purely because of the jam trinity that we talk about, which is Jan Dhan, Aadhaar,
Aadhaar.
and the mobile,
Yeah.
right? So we have already created, and that has turned out to be the world's largest ecosystem, right? I mean, getting 1.4 billion onto a national ID kind of a concept is a Herculean task. But we have crossed that, and now we are reaping the rewards for all the efforts that were put in, say maybe starting 8 to 10 years back. What it also means is that that particular infrastructure can be leveraged by multiple stakeholders. Suddenly, if you see, the fintech or the startup community has mushroomed only after a lot of this infrastructure has been in place,
Exactly.
right? I mean, getting the KYC done, immediately, getting payments done within 5 to 6 seconds, money reaching the bank account, was, something that we could never even think of, maybe say a couple of decades back, right? But today, I think, India to some extent is slightly in a hyper growth model, right? Having said that, I think nothing stops Nepal from moving also at the same speed. In fact, they can learn from the other geographies as well. It's not only India per se, because there are other geographies also who are smaller but have done real wonders as far as digital payments is concerned. And they can actually leapfrog. I mean, we still went through an organic way. Nepal can actually leapfrog a couple of those iterations and straight away achieve something big. But you desperately need something which is a common infrastructure, which 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 is accepted by all, which is blessed by all. So that tomorrow it can't be like, oh, I'm trying to create some proprietary solutions, and which always leaves a doubt in the mind of people that, oh, it does not have a stamp of approval from the people who matter. So should I consume it or not?
So now let's talk about fraud attempts, because this is on a high rise, especially in the digital space. So, what are the risk factors associated with these cross-border transactions?
I mean, honestly, risk is there everywhere, right?
Yeah.
I mean, tomorrow, even if I have to cross the road, there is a risk
Yeah,
of losing money,
exactly.
right? It's also about what kind of mitigants or safety nets that I put in, ensuring that these transactions happen in a very secure manner. And this was again something that I alluded to in my presentation yesterday as well. The point is that, you know, uh, these are very make or break moments,
Exactly.
for the digital
Yeah,
merchants,
exactly.
as I call them, for the people who are for the first time trying to execute a digital transaction. So providing them that comfort that these transactions will happen in a very secure manner, and to establish that trust. That gaining trust is very important because you are dealing with money of people, right? So it's a financial element that is involved. So one is the tech side, right? That how do I do device binding? How do I do encryptions in place? How do I put second factor authentications? How do I ensure that other than you, no one else can end up executing the transactions without compromising on your credential? Second is, you can still know that as humans we are vulnerable and will end up, especially the senior citizen kind of a
Exactly.
category, or the uneducated population who are not very tech friendly or need help or need to do transactions in an assisted mode, you still have to factor for that. And then you have the fraud risk management tools, the safety nets as I call them. So even if it fails the first line of defense, you still have the second line of defense to. And that's where people will now draw a lot of comfort. Now, if you see the way the UPI is structured, right, it's your mobile. You link a bank account. To link a bank account, you give your authentication. The UPI transaction to be executed has a UPI pin as well, which is again,
So there are layer of security is in place, right?
There are multiple.
So we don't need to worry much about that. There can be the fraud
Absolutely
cases.
not. Look, I mean that. So I often say this: there is no insurance to insanity. Okay.
Yeah, that's
So there have been enough and more cases where we have found a person on a wishing or a phishing call ends up giving all his data. You will have those issues happening. How do you try and create that awareness, educate continuously? This is about messaging, ensuring that you reach a near zero, fraud kind of a thing, which is
a constant
continuous
process,
effort,
right?
which
It's
is
a constant
continuous
process.
effort.
Okay. So now let's go back to the awareness side. So how are you going to create awareness to the users so that we can see the increase in volume? Yesterday also we have talked about that 50,000 transactions are happening already. So how are we going to increase it more? Because we see that there are more than 15 lakhs tourists visiting Nepal every year. So out of that, 350,000 people are coming by year. So there's a huge volume, right? And we are in the transaction of 50,000 right now. So what are the things that you are going to do for creating the awareness?
So one is of course how do I communicate with my user base, right? My user base, the 530 million app users that we have today, because I have a daily connection with them. I can do a lot of messaging through the in-app notifications, etc. Right? Plus a lot of outdoor media, uh, digital marketing, uh, your social media. So the consumer today on the India side is more or less aware. In fact, we just started a very large campaign as of yesterday, where we are talking about UPI going international and which all countries, and we actually tried and uh, done it at very high convergence area, places where there are very heavy footfalls, places like your airports, etc., where at the time of boarding, at the time of reaching that airport, it plays on his mind. It's something that is being constantly communicated that now your UPI financial instrument is eligible for international transactions, right? A similar kind of an exercise we will do even on the acquirer side, which is to do a lot of outdoor media advertising as far as again marquee locations is concerned, high footfall places, doing a lot of decaling at the merchant location, so that even if a merchant is not able to recognize a UPI app user, the UPI app user can go and talk to
Yeah.
the merchant saying, and then of course, as we see the traction, and I'm very hopeful, and I've gone on record to say that at least for the next 24 to 36 months, I definitely see Nepal doing a lot many more transactions than the rest of the world as far as UPI is concerned, purely because of the lesser logistic
Yeah,
challenges that
exactly.
are involved, right? And again, then at an appropriate point in time, getting in touch with some strategic merchants, large merchants, working out offers, promotions, discounts with them. That's the way. I mean, we have tried that at the domestic level. We have seen success. So I'm very hopeful that we will be able to replicate and maybe do much better out here as far as the international transactions is concerned.
So one last question I would like to ask. It's a bigger question. That is, so will this remain? Currently, it is between merchant to people to merchant paying system, right? So are we going beyond it?
So I think there will be multiple use cases. I mean,
Use cases.
UPI also when we started, and I'm just trying to think aloud here. UPI also when it started, it was more a P2P thing, right? And then over a period of time, P2M, etc., all of that started. Um, I think the other next step could be about the inward remittances, because cross-border remittances where
Exactly.
people who go in search of livelihood.
Because it's very hard to bring remittance from India
There
to
are
Nepal,
challenges.
right?
There are challenges, and I guess you need a very foolproof and a very easy kind of a methodology rather than the hardships that people face today, right? So that is definitely, I think, something which will be on the cards, because that is a part and parcel of the overall UPI going international as a thought process.
Thank you. Thank you, Ritesh, for this time. And
Thank
it was
you.
wonderful talking with you in bankingsamachar.com.
Thank you so much.
See you again.
Sure.